This is the Hype Squad with Charli McConnell, a podcast where women can be full of themselves and brag about what they're good at. Each week, we're going to bring you conversations covering topics like motherhood, life, relationships, business, and everything in between, because anything is possible with your very own Hype Squad. What's up, ladies? Welcome back to the Hype Squad. Today, I have one of my best friends, Trisha Harp, on the podcast, and she is an entrepreneur, a researcher, a best-selling author, a speaker, and a coach. She has spent the past 2 decades working with couples, teams, forums, and individuals on mastering advanced communication techniques with the goal of strengthening their relationships, both at home and at the office, through her company, the Harp Family Institute. She has been deemed a relationship translator by previous clients, and she has an uncanny ability to understand people, help people understand each other, and help them understand themselves. I'm so excited to have Trisha here today. We have known each other for, like 6 or 7 years at this point, and I hope to have you on here many, many times because we always have the best conversations. But today I wanted to talk about strong groups of women and female friendships and how important they are because, and I'll give a little bit of backstory. Trisha and I are a part of what's called a spousal forum in this organization called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization in Atlanta. So we're in this group of women. There are 7 of us. We are all married to entrepreneurs. We meet every month in a super structured meeting container, and it has been one of the best parts of my life and been so transformative for me. And I thought it would be great for us to talk about that. So with that, Trisha, welcome. I'm so happy you're here. Tell us something about yourself, or let's just dive in.
Yay, Charli, I'm excited to be here. God bless us being married to entrepreneurs, right? Those of you out there who are either entrepreneurs yourself or married to entrepreneurs, you know what we're talking about. It's a crazy, crazy roller coaster life. But yeah, I love that I'm here. I love that you are doing this podcast, and let's get going.
Yeah. So you have a story to share with me, and I'm so glad I haven't heard it yet. So I get to hear it for the first time. But something happened to you last week, and you are so pumped to tell me. So let's just dive into it. Tell me what happened.
Okay. So there are those moments in life. Okay, I'm going to start with when I was in, I think it was 9th grade. I've always known I wanted to do psychology, right? Like I was either going to be a therapist or something, right? From the time I was in 2nd grade. And when I was in 9th grade, I took my first psychology class. And I remember one of the questions that my teacher posed to the class was, does altruism truly exist? And everyone was like, yes, Mother Teresa, the Dalai Lama. And I said, I don't think that it does, because when you do something good for someone else, it feeds your soul, right? It makes you feel good, which isn't actually altruistic because you're getting something from it. It's filling your bucket. And what happened to me this weekend, or this last week, was a perfect example of that. So I went to a business conference last week, which it was in a very, very, very male-dominated industry. And over the last few years, they've made a concerted effort to kind of build a women's, not a women's track necessarily, but like women's group, so that we as the women in this very male-dominated industry could get together and talk and connect, really. And so the first night that we were there was Monday night. I went to the women's mixer and I sat down at this table. And I'm actually an introvert. So like I knew one person at the table and was like, okay, here we go. Like I know somebody, I'm going to sit down and insert myself. And we started talking just about nothing. And this woman sitting next to me, and she said, I've been in this industry, in the technical side of this industry, for 17 years. And I still have imposter syndrome. And I looked at her and I just looked at her and I smiled and I said, well, nobody here knows this about me, right? Like I'm here at this technical industry conference. I said, but my background is really in psychology, and I work with a lot of very, very high-powered type A machismo entrepreneurs, right? And I said, and because I do coaching, I have the privilege to actually have true insight into what is going on with them. Like they open up to me, right? And I said, I've been doing this for so many years, and I want you to know 100%, there is not a human being on this earth who does not experience imposter syndrome. I said, I want you to hear that because it is true. 100% of the entrepreneurs that I have been in contact with experience, imposter syndrome. Everybody does. And I looked at her square in the face and I said, the next time you are in a meeting with all of these men on a Zoom call, I want you to kind of remember the saying that everybody talks about, that when you're up on stage, picture them all in their underwear, right? I want you to look into every single person's face and know with every fiber of your being that regardless of how good they are at faking it, everybody experiences imposter syndrome. And she said, really? I said, yes, I know this is a fact. Like this is not, a question in my mind. It is the truth. So fast forward 4 days, right? We've gone through the conference. I've seen her a few times here and there. We've said hi, super friendly. Love her. She's very sweet. And I'm sitting in the audience of hundreds of people, and they were doing kind of a game show. So there were 3 judges of the game show who all happened to be women. And my husband was one of the judges last year. So I knew what to expect in this arena. It was just a fun kind of quirky thing. So all the judges this year were women, and 2 guys get up, one at a time, and they both do their shtick, right? And they have to kind of present this metric that they've come up with. And they both do this metric based on animals. One is a dog and one is a bear, whatever. Next thing I know, the woman that I met with on Monday night, we're going to call her Sophia. She walks up on stage. And I swear I'm like Tom Cruise at Oprah. Like I wanted to jump on my chair and like cheer. I was so freaking excited for this woman that she was up on stage in front of hundreds of people. And so she starts talking about her metric, which she had come up with the night before. She had this like brainchild that she came up with the night before, submitted her idea, was accepted and approved to get up on stage, within like less than 24 hours. Was up on stage, was presenting, and she won. She won. And I literally, like, I'm taking pictures of her and I'm texting her. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you won. I can't believe I'm so proud of you. I'm so excited. She won $2,500 award, right? So I am like riding this high, like so proud of this woman, so excited for her, amazed really that she's up on stage. And so I go out into the hallway and I run into her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Sophia, I'm so excited for you. So excited. And I give her a hug and she looks at me with this like very serious look. And she's like, life changing. I'm like, I know, it's so exciting. She's like, no, you don't know. Life changing. I have had 2 life-changing experiences this week. And it started with our conversation, with what you said to me, changed my life forever. I have thought about it all week long. And those words that you told me completely shifted my whole being this week. So much so that when I was at dinner last night and I was thinking about, I was reading this book that I got at this conference and I'm taking all my notes, and she like opens her book and there's all these like mathematical calculations that I can't understand at all. And she said, and I had the confidence to submit this proposal last night. I would never have had the confidence to do that. She said, I have never in my life been up on a stage ever presenting anything. And you and what you said on Monday night gave me the confidence to do that.
Wow.
I mean, let's talk about filling my bucket here, right? Like I couldn't be more proud of her, but damn, that feels really good to me too, to know that one conversation made that big of a difference, that this woman went from just like this, like whatever on Monday night, like imposter syndrome, to being up on stage in front of several hundred people in her industry feeling the confidence to present on this metric that she came up with the night before. And
My
then
God.
it was powerful.
Oh my God. So powerful. And I think so many things that I took away from this. Um, First off, the moment that she decided to be vulnerable with a stranger and share that was like, that's a huge step in and of itself, right? And she could have been met with someone who was not open to it or did not give her any constructive feedback or whatever, but she didn't. She picked you. And I do think there's something, you're a coach.
Yeah.
I'm a coach. I understand that idea behind people gravitate and feel safe around us, which is why we make good coaches. But I do think there's a huge responsibility that comes with that when someone does take a chance and is vulnerable with you, that you support them or you give them motivation, hype them up, dare I say. I think, and then for you to see her take that and use that, it is why we do what we do. Like,
Is why we do what we do.
it's
Yes.
incredible. And there's no other feeling like it. It is like a high that no other drug could ever match. And it means that you made change for her when she needed it most. And there's no telling what the future looks like for her because of that one little conversation. And it's a great reminder if someone reaches out to you or is vulnerable to you in any sort of capacity, realize the responsibility if you are capable of it and support them. Realize
Mm-hmm.
that it takes so much to be vulnerable in the first place. And then when someone does, don't shy away from them. Like community and human interaction and vulnerability, like that's what it's all about, if as far as I'm concerned.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, you know, it's interesting. I was telling somebody this week that I struggled with women my whole life, right? Like I just feel like starting in junior high with all the bitchy girl stuff, I I've struggled, but I honestly believe in my heart of hearts that women only do the backstabbing, crabby, bitchy stuff because of our society. And when I remember when Wonder Woman came out originally, and I was reading some of the comments about some, you know, people's comments about it. And they said something about all women in a community and how it would just be awful. And it would be like Lord of the Flies times 10. And I was like, no, no, it would
Mm-mm.
not. I genuinely believe that in our heart of hearts, we want to build each other up, but we're so either afraid or we feel like we can't because we have to stick up for ourselves. And, you know, it's, you know, fight the good fight. But the truth is, if we didn't have these external forces telling us that we have to either act like a man in a man's environment or, you know, if we're bossy, if we're assertive, that means we're bossy. If we didn't have these different constructs, I believe that we would inherently just lift each other and help each other be the best that we can be, because that's what makes an amazing society. And it's certainly what makes an amazing society of women, right? And we are so freaking capable. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're crazy capable. And we're crazy good at seeing each other's strengths. And so, yeah, I'm all about like, let's build each other up instead of tearing each other down.
You know, it's interesting. When I first started CMCO, my first idea was to bring together college girls in small group containers that were not in the same sorority, were not friends with each other, didn't come from the same background, because I wanted to cultivate a space where women started loving each other sooner. Because
Yeah.
what I learned in my own experience and with so many women around me is so many of us don't start loving other women until like our 30s, 40s, God forbid, even sometimes our 50s.
Yep.
And we miss out on so much motivation, so much power, so much community. And so I really wanted, and I haven't created the group environment. I am working with college girls, but I haven't quite figured out the best way to do it. But what the ultimate goal always was to start early, because I was the same was the same way. Like anyone listening, I'm sure at least one person can relate to this. I always said I was a guy's girl. I
Me
did better
too.
with guys, and I was more friends with guys because girls were too drama and bitchy, and I didn't have time for that and whatever. And really looking back on it, that was just a huge defense mechanism to protect myself. Guys didn't have drama. I didn't have to compete with guys. It felt safer is not the right word, but less complicated is probably a better way of putting it. And
Completely
so,
agree.
and I was so wrong. Like I am not a girl. I am a girl's girl through and through. And I always was. It just was so intimidating. Other women were very intimidating to me. And it wasn't until, and for me, the game changer was being really self assured in who I was before I could start letting other women, like being with them in their company without being intimidated by them. Because I will say, I think that's still a huge thing is that if you're around other strong women, so many of us see that as a bad thing. And to me, if I see a woman walk in a room with a ton of confidence, I may be intimidated, but I'm also like super gravitated towards her. Like I want to be friends with her. I want to hang out with her. But I could not have gotten to there if I wasn't confident in myself first. If I didn't feel like I also had something to offer and also, however you want to put that, I really had to get to that place internally first
Hmm.
before I could stop seeing other women as a threat. How was it for you like when it shifted?
It's a good question. Well, it shifted for me just liking women, like you said. I feel like once we all had kids and we were all dealing with the same crap, I finally, for the first time, the women around me were being honest
Mm,
and they weren't putting up this facade. And also, I think maybe with coaching, I just learned same thing with the imposter syndrome, right? Like I just learned that nobody has it all. Nobody's got it all together, no matter what their facade is. And so it just was like, get off your high horse. Like we're all in the same boat together. Like we're all feeling the same exact thing. I think for me though, I don't know, like I always liked myself, which I think is an unusual thing. And I think it's unusual. And I remember, when I was dating, my parents would be like, Trish, do you have low self-esteem based on the guys that I was dating? I was like, no, actually, you guys have done a lovely job. I have high self-esteem and I'm dating nice guys because the guys out there are really crappy. And so I've chosen these guys that will build me up and make me feel like I am very worthy, instead of guys that were tearing me down. So I always wanted, I don't know. So that doesn't really answer your question, but I've really always craved female friends that I could just be me with and that I could rely on as to be real and
mhm.
not fake. And so that part of it shifted, I think not more than 10 years ago, and I'll be 50 this year. So I guess when I turned around 40, I suddenly was surrounded by other women that were just real and that I could be real with. And not that I ever really wasn't real, but I think I intimidated people. And so I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah. I think going back to intimidated, and I want to come back to what happened with Sophia last week. But I've been told by people in my life that I was intimidating. And I never took that as a compliment. I always took that as, oh my God, why would you not want to come talk to me? Why would you think I was intimidating? And what I have come to learn and really had to accept is that it's not me, it's them. Right? It's not that I'm intimidating, it's that they're intimidated. And I can't fix that for them. And I can't change that for them. And so I'm not going to dim my light or dim my presence because I don't want to affect other people. And it took me a really long time to get to that place. But now I don't read the room immediately and change the way I present myself depending on who I'm reading in the room. I just come in the same way every time. And that took a very long time to get to. But
Mhm.
it made me think of that when you said intimidating. I I want to go back to one of the things that happened with Sophia, which was the imposter syndrome, because you're totally right. And I don't think that a lot of people realize that everyone deals with that. It's kind of like a confidence thing too. Like everyone, and I've talked about this before, you'll see a woman come in the room and you're like, oh my God, she's so confident. I want that. And nine times, no, 100% of
Other
the
times.
time, she is not confident. She is just playing a part and she is pretending, and everyone else around her believes it. But if
Yep.
you were to ask her, I mean, if Megan Fox, of all people, can say that she doesn't think she's attractive, I read some article where she said that. And I was like, she's full of shit, first of all. Like, there's no way she doesn't think she's attractive. But that is a perfect example. You never know what's going through their head. And it's the same thing with imposter syndrome. Everyone feels it. Everyone feels like they could be more confident or that they're not confident enough. And it's something that we can all relate to.
It absolutely is. And I think that it varies, right? Like there are moments where, it took me a long time to get over the imposter syndrome with coaching. It took me a long time to get over the imposter syndrome with getting up in front of a group of people and speaking. And I still have it sometimes, right? Like it creeps back in. It's like that little, voice in your head that says, you could be better, because we can always be better, right? That's what our society tells us. We can always be better. So even when we inch towards feeling more confident, it's still there.
Mm.
And I think that accepting the fact that it's still there is good, is okay. It is part of being human, and and acknowledging that as humans, we're not perfect. There's always room for improvement. But then on the flip side, reminding ourselves, and I think that for me, when I have to tell somebody a little bit about myself and I'm like rattling off the things that I've done or that I do or whatever, I'm like, wow, if I were you, I'd think I was a pretty freaking badass bitch. Like, yes. But internally, sometimes I'm like, I feel like crap today. This is what's going on in my life. All these things are weighing on me. I suck. Like we all think it, we all feel it, and recognizing that it's okay. And it doesn't mean we actually truly suck. It just means that we feel like shit in that moment. And the moment will pass. Let it pass. Take it on, absorb it, know that you are a badass bitch, awesome, and move on.
Yeah, I mean, nothing is linear, right? Like
Right.
everything ebbs and flows. Like it's the human experience. And I think everyone feels like shit. And then the next moment you may feel like on top of the world, right? And it's just kind of welcoming those shifts. And it's part of the reason why I named this the hype squad and do the hype list, is because you have to be reminded. It's, you gave the example just then about when you talk about or you say your credentials or whatever, you're reminded like, I am a bad bitch. Like I forget it sometimes, but it is nice to say it out loud. And that was kind of the point behind the hype list, is that we have these moments of feeling like shit, not feeling worthy, feeling very low. And when you have a hype list to go back to, you can remind yourself, okay, this is just a moment and it's going to pass. I just feel like shit right now. This is not who I am. And I'm going to let it flow because I'm going to come right back out of it. Right. And I
Ride
think,
the wave.
yeah, I read something not too long ago that said something to the effect of, if you don't feel a little bit of imposter syndrome, you're doing the wrong thing. Because if you're not feeling like you're in the wrong room, or you're not, you're not capable, or you don't have the pedigree or whatever it is, that means you're not growing. It
Right.
means that you have maxed out and you're in the wrong place. It's like if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So
Amen.
I do love that reminder. And I want to talk about, before we finish up here, I want to talk about our individual experiences with our forum. Without giving too much away, but also just how impactful that has been. You've been a part of multiple forums. I have only been in this one, which I think it's 6 years now. So let's talk about that for a minute, because I think that's a really cool aspect to share.
Yeah, so I've been in three different forums in three different states, all with different women, and had completely different experiences,
Mhm.
based on who the people are and how open we are. You know, we happen to be in a forum, the two of us are in a forum where the aim of this forum is to get to like the 5%, which is like the upper echelon of the stuff that we really wrestle with, right? Like what is the true core of who we are? And when you grow as a forum, like you might be, getting to that 5% is what they call it, but then new people come in and you go back down to like 20%, right? Because you're too afraid to share. And we happen to have one person in our forum who's like at 1%, right? Like she just is this like person on a table who is like bears her everything. And on Charli, when you first came in, I think for your first real forum, the presentation was about as raw and real and, you know, deep as it could get. And I just remember sitting there like, oh, thank you to this person who was so open and just sort of started the forum. We added three new people, and I thought, oh gosh, here we go again, because I've been through that and it didn't happen, right? And we all just said, okay, good. We're starting at 1%, right? Nothing is sacred. We're just going to share everything. And that is an incredible thing. And for me, like we were at four people for a while. And like I said, we added three more. And I remember we went on a retreat and one person got sick. And we were in a location where it was a very easy location to go out and party and drink. And every other time I've been at that location, it's been like, yeah, let's go. And instead of doing the thing that people do at that location, it was just all about rallying around the person who was sick. We all went back to the hotel room. We figured out how to, trip double team to get her back safely. And I remember at that moment thinking, love these women. Like, wow, for the first time in my life, love these women. And then when the three were added, I thought, oh, I was really worried. But
Mm.
because of one of those individuals just bearing her soul, I mean, it just has progressed in that amazing, confidential, truly open way. And it's been
Mm.
magical for me too.
Yeah. So to give a little bit of background about forum in and of itself, you mentioned the 3%. And the way that I look at the 3% rule, and I want to say this too, like you don't go into the forum like we have a forum super lax. Like you go into it, there's a lot of structure. You go to training programs before you enter in. There's a whole meeting agenda. You have a moderator, you have a timekeeper. Everyone has a role, right? And the 3% rule was something that was really difficult for me to understand. And some more backstory, I entered a spousal forum because my husband was also entering a forum. And he thought it was really important for me to understand, first of all, the confidentiality so that I would understand when he comes home, he can't talk to me about what was said in forum. And he
Right.
wanted me to be able to have that experience. And thankfully, they had this spousal forum, which was a really interesting thing for me because I don't know a lot of other women who are married to entrepreneurs. And so it felt very niche and very special. But the 3% thing, the way I look at it, and you're right, that first day, it set the bar high, super, super
Yeah.
high. And I met that bar. And I think all of the new women joining met that bar as well and felt like, oh wow. And I immediately said, these are my kind of women. Like, holy shit, I can dig deep with these women.
Yeah.
And the 3% to me is, have I told anyone else? That's the number one question I ask myself. Am I embarrassed to tell anyone? Is this something I would even write in a journal? And if my answer to all of those are like, no, I wouldn't share, that's my 3%.
Yep. That's a
And
great description.
if it's something that I have, if I would tell my neighbor on a walk or I would tell my mom or my sister, that's not 3%, right? And so it really takes a lot of continued effort to stay at that level. It doesn't happen easily. But I will say, you know, the structure of Forum taught me not only to love these women, we're also very different. And I'm not sure if we would have ever all come together in this way had it not have been for this forum or that we were married to entrepreneurs. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. It was such a expansion moment for me because with friends, I would say, okay, this doesn't really fit me or doesn't suit me, or we don't really have a lot in common. I'm going to move on. And the forum experience is so different in that we are so different, but we have core things in common and we have this love for each other. And while I may not agree with everyone, or maybe sometimes I get frustrated with something that happens, I still come back to there is an opportunity for me to learn something about myself in this moment. And the love that we have for each other, it's never about them. It's about me and how I received it and what is going on inside of me that made me feel that way. Right.
And
And
respect.
right. Yeah. Oh my God. So much respect. But it's just been such an eye opening process for me as an individual to learn why some things about other people bother me. And it's never the same thing. Right. But it's such a bird's eye view of me digging into myself. Like whatever was said had nothing to do with me. If somebody else, like, why is this bothering me? And then I have to go backwards internally, which has been really great. Also, another thing I learned is not to give advice. You don't give advice in forum, you give experience share. So let's say, for instance, Trisha is telling me a story and I think, oh, this is what you should do. I think you should do this. You
Don't
cannot
shit on me, Charlie.
you cannot do that in forum. And you actually have people in most forums that their only job is to call that kind of shit out and say, oh, nope, nope, Gestalt, you can't do that. Gestalt's a whole nother thing. And you have to give experience shares and you have to listen. And each person gets 7 minutes of uninterrupted share time with 3 minutes of questions, at least in our forum. And then you do like presentations. And I share all of that to say, I'm not saying everyone should go out and become part of a forum, and it's not for everyone, but the structure, the common ground, the respect, the love that I learned through this group of women, this forum, was life changing for me.
I want to share a story actually.
Yeah, please do.
So I went quite a few years without being in a forum. And when I was living out in California, and something happened in my family that was heavy, like really heavy, right? And I talked with quite a few friends about the situation, and I couldn't get past it. I couldn't really process it. It was very, very challenging for me. And I moved to Atlanta and I joined this forum. And I think on the second time that we met, like the second month, I chose to present on this issue that I'd been dealing with for years at that point. And the way that it works, you get coached by somebody in the forum, sort of like what we're doing, and you sort of get to the, core issue, and then, as Charlie said, you do these experience shares. And there is something different about the process that you go through that is totally different than what you talk about with a friend, right? Like I shared with my friends and they, oh, that's so hard. Have you done this? Have you tried that? And it's a lot, like our communications are very different. And I even went to somebody who I had been in a past forum with. And so I went through the process, I presented on this issue, and the person that was coaching me did some experience sharing during our coaching. And I had this amazing aha, life-changing. And ever since then, and then I presented and got more experience shares. And ever since then, I've been able to forgive for the situation that happened. And we've been able to try, like, to get on this healing path. And it started because of the coaching and the presentation and the way that it's structured and the aha that I had based on other people's experiences allowed me to view the situation from multiple perspectives. And from there, I was able to heal and to mend fences. So it's a very different and powerful way to communicate. And since then, in my coaching, I use experience shares all the time. And I tell people before, like when we're first talking, I say, I'm part of this group and, I do a lot of personal experience shares. So if there's something that I say that you can take from, great. If you're like, Trisha, that has no bearing on, on what I'm trying to say, please let me know. But that is a way that it's a tool that I use in my coaching all the time because it's powerful and it bonds people to you and it gives people a completely different perspective of what they're going through based on something that somehow connects to what you've gone through.
Mm. I love that you brought up the coaching for the presentations and the experience shares. I too use that term all the time with clients. Can I give you an experience share? I
Mm-hmm.
typically will ask for consent and I share. And the point in that is I'm not going to tell you what you need to do, but I'm going to tell you how it happened to me, maybe how I handle it or whatever it may be to kind of create community.
Right.
Right. Because that's another thing about coaching is you don't know anything about my life. I'm not sharing a lot of stuff. It's not a girlfriend gab session where you're bitching and then I'm bitching. I'm only listening to you. But if I have something that's relevant, and I always say, like, take what lands for you and leave the rest
Yep.
because it doesn't always land. It doesn't always, it's not always helpful, but that's okay. But I want you to understand, I kind of get it, right? I want to resonate with you and have that common ground a little bit. And I also think, so much of what I do coaching, I learned from Forum.
Mm-hmm.
I learned, how I wanted to be supported, how other women liked being supported. And in that container, have learned so much, right? And that sometimes it's okay to be silent and to let it sit and to not feel. And it's okay to accept big emotions and big feelings and let it. And actually, one of the practices we did at one of our retreats was the bubble exercise from your workbook, which I'll share in the show notes. And I use that in coaching every single day because it's like creating this protective boundary around you. Sometimes it's made of like an actual bubble that can be easily broken. And then sometimes it's made of plexiglass that no one can penetrate, and it protects you as a coach or as a receiver from letting things come into you and move right through you and not holding on or carrying them or protecting yourself from letting it really affect you but still getting to hold space for these people. And I learned that from you. Um, so I think that, the idea behind this conversation, I wanted it to be a reminder of if you don't have a lot of women in your life, go get some. Put yourself in situations if you can, look for groups, find small groups of women. Maybe it's your church, maybe it's at a school, maybe it's at a club, something you can do to put yourselves in the room with more women to encourage you, uplift you. And maybe you won't find the right group at first, but keep trying, right? There are groups out there. There are people, especially once you have kids, that opens up a whole nother door if you want to have children. But put yourself in these situations because I can almost guarantee that you're going to be better because of it.
Yeah, and try to find women who challenge you, right? And that whole, I always tell people, fake it till you make it. And I know that that's a bit of a controversial commentary, but it's what men do, right? It's what I told this woman, like men are really good at faking it. Like they're BSing their way through things all the time and they're really good at it. And so if you're feeling imposter syndrome, if you're feeling intimidated, if you're feeling whatever it is you're feeling, it's okay to feel those feels, but fake it for a bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or be completely open and real and be like, oh my gosh, this is very intimidating for me. And then just hear what comes back to you, right? And be open to the feedback that being honest and real and raw comes, right? Maybe if the feedback is, something you don't want to hear or negative or tears you down, well, that's not the right group. And yay, now, right? Go find
Mm-hmm.
another one. But if the feedback is, oh my gosh, you intimidate me, or really, like, that's crazy because you're amazing, then that is your group, right? Because that is the group that looks at you the way that you want to be looking at yourself.
Mm,
And so be with
yes.
them.
I
They'll
love
lift you
that.
up.
I love that. Trisha, I want to do your hype list. This is obviously the hype squad. And I want you to give me something that you have achieved and then also an obstacle that you had to overcome in order to achieve that.
So let's see. I think I'm trying to remember what I put down. I don't remember
Just
what
give
it
me in
is,
real
but
time. Real time.
so something that I have achieved, or that I don't know. I suppose it's I have achieved this ability at this stage to no longer care, to really care, about other women judging me because I know they are, right? Like we judge, it's what we do. And so now that I know that any situation I go into, I'm being judged, I'm okay with that because at least I aim to lead by example, right? So that, I guess, is what I've overcome is this, it's what I've learned, achieved, and overcome all in one is I've learned that, women are going to judge, people are going to judge. And it is the way that I choose to respond to people and choose to put myself out there that is going to change their opinions of me. I was at this leadership thing, and there was a woman there who was cranky and snarky and totally complete opposite of me. And I know she looked at me as this like, rah, rah, such a mom cheerleader kind of person, right? And I was like, I am going to change her opinion of me, and I am going to befriend her, and I am going to build her up, and I am going to do what I can to make her feel heard and validated and, empowered throughout the time that we had together. And we were only together for 2 days. And sure enough, by the end of those 2 days, she was like, holy crap, you're not at all what I expected you to be. And that's what I've learned. It doesn't matter if people judge me. So I don't worry about it because it's how I present myself and how I show up that matters. And if I feel like I'm showing up the way that I want to, then yay for me. And hopefully yay for the other people around me.
Mm, I love that. Trisha, I love you. You are by
Right.
far one of my favorite people, one of my favorite women in my life. And you're just the best. And I thank you so much for coming on and having this raw and honest conversation with me. And I hope to do it 100 more times with you. So I yeah, I'll put all of Trisha's contact information in the show notes, the workbook that I mentioned, her website, how to work with her. Also, as a side note, anyone that comes to me that's in a relationship and wants coaching, I always refer them to Trisha. So she is a wonderful, wonderful coach, and I'll put all of the details. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for coming and getting hyped with me. And I can't wait to
Having
do it
me.
again.
Ditto.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.